Well, hello, my name is Laura Ann Smith, and this is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, the continuation. And we're just looking at the Survivor to Thriver workbook. It's a manual that's the ASCA put out, the Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, the Morris Center program. And that's what we're looking at and just moving through it. And it's for the last, these almost 2 weeks now. And I just recently started doing this again, this broadcasting. So hopefully you're getting something out of it. And I have some friends here with me already. I've got Wanda here and Melissa. I hope you're having a good morning and a good day so far. And it's just good to see you. I appreciate you being here with me. And so we'll get into this. I always do a sort of a safety check in the beginning of the show because, the topics of abuse and child abuse and violence and whatnot can bother people. So you have to make sure that if you're listening, that you're watching this, you're okay to be looking at this stuff and hearing about it, because this sort of thing can actually trigger survivors of abuse, and then they'll have a miserable day, and they might injure themselves or hurt somebody else, and you don't want that. So you want to make sure that you're safe enough, and just do a safety check. Just say, am I safe enough to be listening to this today? Is this something that's going to bother me? And if so, just turn the channels, watch something else. You wouldn't be hurting my feelings at all. And the issues of child abuse are very, it's a downer subject. No, it really is, especially first thing in the morning. So I just do this show at this time because I know this is pretty well the only time I can lock in to actually do this show and make sure I do it. So I do it in the morning, but it's hard to listen to. So if you're a survivor, like I said, make sure that you're safe enough to be listening so that you won't kind of go backward in your healing journey or just have a miserable day. Nobody wants that. And then if you're feeling stronger, you can always watch it another time or go check that manual out yourself. That manual it's free. It's free to use. And you can get it from ASCA website. You can download it. You can read it right from the website as a web page. And they don't charge for it. The only way they charge for it is if you want a hard copy, because then they have to pay for the collating and all that stuff, the binding and stuff, and then to ship it. So, but it's free to use for anybody who wants to grab a copy. So, and I don't think they'd mind me reading from it because I don't monetize my stuff, so I don't make money off of it, and I don't change the wording and say that I wrote it, sort of thing. So I'm pretty sure they wouldn't mind us going through this. I volunteer with them. I have a support group going, and also with the SIA, Survivors of Incest Anonymous. So I just started those groups back up with those two not-for-profits, and for group support, peer-to-peer group support. So anybody's interested in that, you can get a hold of me. Just look at my info in the About section. Under the About section, I've got my email address and all that stuff is there. So we'll get right into this. We left off on step 1 yesterday. Step 1 in this ASCA Survivor to Thriver manual, it's part of 21 steps. This is the first step we're looking at. And we went through most of it yesterday, but there's a piece of it we've got to finish up today. Step 1 is, I am in a breakthrough crisis, having gained some sense of my abuse. And that's like when we're just starting, like some people call it a breakthrough crisis, like they do. I called it a breakdown because that's what happened to me. Just before I started my healing journey, I was at the lowest point I'd ever been in my lifetime. As far as an adult survivor, I was really down. And I was having what I thought to be a breakdown, but they actually call it a breakthrough, because that's at the point where I decided to reach out and get help and not suffer on my own, struggle on my own with this stuff, right? So it's a breakthrough crisis. I like the sound of that actually a lot better. And yeah, that is good, Wanda, and I'm glad for you. I've made a lot of peace myself, and I'm still working on some things, and that's okay. But it's like you said, it never hurts to stay on a healing path. And I think that's just so true. And I know I learn stuff all the time looking at this material. I've read this book. I did the manual years ago when I first started my healing journey, and went through it, answered the questions, did the actual work. But I've looked at it since several times. So it's been since 2010, really. So that's 11 years ago. I've actually looked at it many times, and it's very, very. And in the group, you do look at it. So I've used it over the years. It's just good to check and see where we're at. if there's something we need to work on, sort of thing. I can sort of gauge by how I'm feeling when I'm reading this material, what feelings are coming to me. And then it tells me what I kind of need to work on. So step one, we read the actual step, and then we looked at the self-help. Now we're going to check out the professional help information that they have. That is 68, page 68 on their PDF. Web page, I don't know, but on the PDF, it's page 68. Professional help, this is their suggestions for people. We already looked at self-help, so now we're looking at professional help. Number one, the breakthrough crisis can be remarkably productive time in therapy because the memories and feelings are so accessible. However, you will also need help to express and manage the feelings without stifling them. Ask your therapist for help in devising a structure to help you modulate your experience of the feelings so that you can deal with them piece by piece. And number two, during this time, it may help to see your therapist more frequently than once a week, if this is possible. This is if you're actually seeing a therapist or a counselor, right? It's called professional help. It's the professional section, right? We looked at self-help yesterday. So they said, discuss with your therapist whether this would be advisable. The advent of managed care and diminished third-party reimbursement insurance for therapy has made this more difficult, but many therapists are willing to make arrangements with their clients. Also check to see that you have your therapist's emergency phone number so you can reach him or her during evening or in weekend hours. You and your therapist may want to develop a crisis management plan, including actions that you can take to help calm yourself and engage for determining if you need emergency help. Now, this stuff is so serious. Like, I think, the outside world has no idea how hard this stuff is to get through. People who suffer from PTSD, anxiety issues, panic attacks, obtrusive memories, and all that stuff that's related, sort of the aftermath of trauma, right, is really hard to deal with, and it can be overwhelming. I know for me it was, and maybe not for everybody, but for me it was definitely. I'm just trying to wake up. Actually, I was up talking to my friend till like 3:00 in the morning, but she lives in Australia, so our time differences are so different. It's kind of the only time I could talk to her was late at night, and we were on the phone talking for like 5 hours, which is really nice of her. She was paid for the call. But she's the lady that helped me get through a lot of my pain that I was dealing with. Very nice lady, Kate Mitchell. And I hadn't talked to her for over a year, so it was really nice to catch up. But now I'm just waking up, trying to wake up here. So they said, number 3, if you feel that you cannot cope with what is surfacing, tell your therapist and explore ways to slow this powerful process down. Remember that you have a right to move at your own pace, so be sure to let your therapist know if it feels too overwhelming to continue focusing on the memories. If you need to, refer to the section on responsible recovery, responsible therapy in chapter 1. You may need to put some distance between yourself and the memories until you can regain sufficient control to feel safe again. In some cases, taking medication or entering the hospital for a brief stay may be helpful. Not everyone will need this, but some survivors who are recovering traumatic memories may benefit from this kind of support. And that's right, because we're all in different, as a survivor of abuse, we have that commonality, but, we all experience different things and we all handle things differently. We're all different people, right? So not all of us none of us are going to be the same in our healing journey, right? And so they're just giving suggestions for people, sort of from, mild symptoms to somebody who has really severe symptoms of PTSD and this type of stuff that can really cause people a lot of problems, right? So that's very important, as a survivor of abuse, if you're listening to this. If you can't cope and you're having trouble, there's no shame in reaching out for help. We need to do that, right? Because it's not our fault what happened to us. Why then should we go through life suffering and really, not doing well because of what somebody did to us, like what somebody did to me, right? And that's why when I started getting help, I was like, that's it. I'm getting help. And I don't care how long it takes. I don't care how much help I have to get through this stuff. I'm doing it. And, it's just important to make sure that if you do you know, if you do struggle and you're just afraid to reach out, there's some really good help out there. You just have to look for it. So we'll move on to step two. And step two is I have determined that I was physically, sexually, or emotionally abused as a child. And this step, like, I mean, when I first saw this step originally when I did this workbook, this stuff was very hard for me to deal with because I'd never dealt with the abuse. And it was hitting me like a ton of bricks at the time. And I remember looking at this stuff and I was just, it's sort of just so hard. It's not that I was really in denial. I wasn't really in denial about the abuse, but I never wanted to actually look at it, of course not. But that's why I wasn't dealing with it. So then it would manifest in my life in really horrible ways. And so, when I looked at that question, I'm like, I've already determined. That was a long time ago that I determined that I was physically and sexually and emotionally abused as a child. And for some people, they have memories that will surface much later in life. So then, they go through a period of their life, adult life, not even realizing that they were abused, and then all of a sudden, these memories will come, and they'll be like, oh, "Am I crazy? Did this really happen?" Because it was blocked. You know what I mean? So they start at that point they start to realize that they need help because they were abused. That can happen too, right? Hi, Passaggio Olivello. Good evening. I hope your day's been good. It's nice to have you here. And so this stuff is, I have determined that I was physically, sexually, or emotionally abused as a child. That's very difficult. Step two asks you to determine and then acknowledge to yourself that you were abused as a child and that the effects of the abuse may be causing some of your difficulties as an adult. Many of you who are in the process of recalling memories of your past may not yet have objective evidence of the abuse, and you may never find outside validation or corroboration of what happened. Instead, your evidence may be more intuitive. So even in the absence of hard evidence, these intuitive feelings are significant and should not be dismissed. Many abuse survivors were either too traumatized or psychologically incapable of organizing memories into words and images that can be recollected years later. If this is where you are in your recovery now, continue to work this step to clarify the kind of abuse you suffered. And if you need to, refer to the section on false memories, real memories in chapter 1. And that's just it. So many times, I mean, children who were abused at very, very young ages, that's going to be the difficulty. Because some people do have memories of, being 1-year-old, 2-year-old, toddler, but not very many. That's not common. Most people have memories sort of starting after 3 or 4. And I know my memories are not very, I can't really get a hold of them too well before the age of 4. I have a few sort of brief memories from before that, but there's not many. And I suppose if I did some sort of program in psychotherapy or something, they might be able to get more of that stuff, to have it come to the surface. Because I believe that those memories are there. It's just that they aren't as easily accessible. Some people who were abused as babies and infants and toddlers, later in life, that stuff will come out and they just be like, "What, am I nuts?" You know what I mean? Like, where is this coming from? I'm not naming names because I never do, but I knew a lady who that happened to, and she was abused as a baby, and just horrific. But this is what's going on, and we know it is. And so she had to actually go into a real facility to have some real treatment to help bring this stuff to the surface because she was abused as a baby, right? And so, I mean, we're talking under 1-year-old, like 1-year-old, 2-year-old. So, some people will have these memories and just vaguely, they're so hard to get a hold of, right? For me, from 4 on, I have most of my memories intact. So, I can remember, which is how she has no clue. She doesn't really kind of is as that person growing up in the house that we did because she's blocked it all. And at one point, she didn't realize even who she was because she was born in Goose Bay, Labrador, in Canada, and she's never been there as an adult because my parents were my dad was in the military up in Canada here, and they moved from base to base, so they moved all over the place. And my sister was born in Goose Bay, Labrador, but she only was there for maybe not even a year, and then they moved. So she kind of feels lost because she doesn't know who she is. She was born in a place she's never been to. She's the only one that was born in Labrador, so she's sort of one of these people that doesn't have a real good, solid foundation of who she is. That can happen to people, right? And, especially for people who've been abused, it's very traumatic. It's very traumatizing. Right? But for me, the memories and stuff I always had. I mean, it's not like I really didn't know what happened. And for me, it's been very easy to get a hold of those memories. The CSA child sexual abuse, I did block some of that out actually. And I just pushed it down so I wouldn't have to deal with it because I was being abused as a child already and I couldn't cope. Obviously, I mean, it's very traumatic stuff. And so I'm still working on trying to get a hold of some memories. But the solid ones that are there are still there. So it's, I may not ever be able to recover all of them, but I'm trying to work through that stuff still. So until I work through it, it's still gonna be there. And this is hard stuff to do. That's why you want to have help to do this. If you can't do it on your own, if you're not safe enough to do this stuff on your own, you need somebody to help you get through this stuff. Right? So an important sub goal in this step is learning to accept your feelings about the abuse, whatever they may be at this time. And these feelings may not make complete sense to you, but they are there for a reason. In the same way that the pain from the bruise tells you of a physical injury, the feelings associated with your abuse signal an internal emotional bruise. Instead of ignoring the feelings, you should try to figure out what those feelings are telling you. As a survivor, you probably had your feelings invalidated by your parents or abusers, so not recognizing your feelings as valid now may be an old pattern you want to break. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt when it comes to verifying your feelings. You will need time and help to sort out what happened, free of the denial and distortion of the past. And so it's hard, getting in touch with those feelings about the abuse. That's easier said than done. And I think, you have to be careful doing that stuff, like I said, because, you don't want to injure yourself, hurt somebody else because you're dealing with this stuff, right? For me, I did a lot of writing. That's basically what I did. I just journaled all of my feelings, how I felt about it. And I mean, I did a massive amount of that sort of thing. And, that's why I wrote books and stuff. I was writing a lot, doing a lot of journaling, and just really allowing myself to be honest with myself, to uncover this stuff, the anger, the rage. And I knew that I had a lot of work to do, because I had so many issues. And it's, I had to start someplace. So I would write down, how am I feeling about the abuse, That's a very hard thing for survivors of abuse to do, because it is actually then acknowledging the abuse. And it's kind of like, wow, that hurt me. That really did, almost destroyed my life. That's no good. And that's why, however you choose to do it, some people, like I said, would prefer just to do counseling or therapy. And some people would prefer just to do self-help, which is mainly what I've done with some support groups though. And, but it's whatever you need, you know what I mean? And it's just important, because until we actually acknowledge that stuff, nothing really changes. Like that's where I was at so many years ago, 2010, especially doing Blog Talk Radio in the morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning. I really had to learn how to change the way I felt about myself, because I was a working adult in my 40s, quite confident in my work skills, and that sort of thing wasn't a problem. But I needed to change the way that I saw myself as a person, you know what I mean? And in order to do that, I had to get in touch with the feelings, how I felt about myself. And these things can be very, very difficult. It's not something that's just easy. For most people, it's really not. And because trauma is trauma, this stuff can be very painful. So that's what I'm saying, you got to be careful when you're doing this stuff. It's very important, especially if you're just starting out on your healing journey, because you're not sure, nobody's really sure how they're going to react until it actually happens. And if you end up with having a crisis situation, and you didn't even think that would happen, and all of a sudden you can't breathe, and or you're thinking you might start self-injure, you know, or whatever, you don't want to do that. So that's what I'm saying. Be very cautious with this stuff. Take the time you need. Like I like what they had to say there about the, don't rush this step. Sometimes you have to step away from it for a bit, come back to it. That's what I do. If I have to take a break, I just take a break from it. And certain things in life will come up and it's just too much to deal with. Or I'm just not well, so I have to take a break, anything like that. And that's okay because I just come back to it later on. I've done that many times over the last 12 years. And as people know, I keep showing up a little bit later. It's like, okay, I'm back on it. I'm willing to work through this stuff because it's painful, no doubt. It said at this point, the connection between your abuse and your current problems as an adult may be very tenuous. It will take more work on the subsequent steps in stage 1 before you can firmly establish this link. In the meantime, keep an open mind as you explore the reality of your abuse and let the meanings emerge with the new information and understanding that you develop. So the self-help suggestions they have here, number 1, write down the date that you first acknowledged the abuse to yourself. And this date will signify the beginning of your recovery. Remember it well, as you will want to honor this date in subsequent years when you are enjoying the fruits of your labor. Number 2, over the course of a week or two, look over any old family albums and photographs or home movies you may have. Just leave them around the house so that you can look at them and think about them at your leisure. If you have no photographic records of the past, try some visualization exercises. And this is tough right here, such as imagining taking a walk through your childhood home, your relatives' homes, or your old school. This is how people can sort of get in touch with the memories, right? Is looking at old photographs, visualizing walking through homes that you lived in. And for me, the abuse happened in my home, so that's a very daunting task, walking through the home. I mean, I did it because I wrote my books and I've done a lot of work on publicly telling people what went on in my home. But the thing is when you're just starting out on your healing journey, this stuff can be very, very hard. For me, I had old photographs, not so much of like myself, because my parents didn't take pictures of us. They didn't have a camera. They weren't interested in taking pictures of their children. This was back in the 60s. These people did. My parents were born in the 20s. So they didn't really care about that kind of stuff. It's not like modern parents who take pictures of everything their children are doing from birth to, much later, throughout their whole life, really, which is wonderful. But some people don't like it. I think it's great. And but the thing is my parents, they're the old school parents from the 20s. They didn't do that kind of stuff. And so I don't think my mom would have known how to operate a camera. She had no clue. So my sister was the only one actually taking pictures. And she had a camera. And she bought herself a camera when she was young. And she used to take pictures. I had some pictures, and I actually saved some of my siblings. But the pictures of my parents, I destroyed. I completely got rid of them. And I'm like, because I can't look at that. So, be very careful looking at old photographs and looking at going back and doing visualizations of the houses where you were, wherever the abuse took place. Be very, very careful with that stuff. That's what I'm saying. It's just not something that is easy to do for abuse survivors. And it's important to get in touch with that stuff, but you have to be very cautious how much of it you do, how fast you do it. I didn't do, actually I did because I wrote books, but the thing is the visualization stuff where I went and saved myself from all these places where I was wounded. I did that much later, like 2012, I think it was 2013, something like that. So, it's quite a ways into it before I actually started really doing that. But I needed to do that. I'm glad that I did. And that's part of that program, My Envisioned Mind. And that's what that is. It's a visualization tool put out by a lady in Australia, Beverly Searle. And she's put this program together to help anybody who suffered trauma. But it's not even just for people who suffered trauma of any type. It's useful for a lot of things. But it really did help me out because I finally got myself to safety, because being abused as children, quite often there's no one there to help. There's no support. children are just abused and left to deal with it. So I went around and picked myself up from these wounding, these places of wounding. But I was strong enough at that point to do that without causing me a lot of grief. You know, making me have a horrible day or wanting to self-injure or hurt myself or hurt somebody else. I knew I was going to be fine to do this. So that's where you have to be really careful about this stuff. You know, you have to know what's good for you. If you're not ready to do something like that, then just absolutely don't do that. You have to kind of gauge this stuff. They're just giving suggestions, but if you're going through this manual, you want to think about it and actually sort of go through it first before you start doing the work and see, am I really ready for that? You know, is that going to be something that's going to be good for me right now or hinder my healing journey, right? These are questions only you can answer as a survivor of abuse. You know, only you know that answer to that question. You'll know when you're ready if you ever decide to do it. Many survivors probably don't because they don't want to revisit that stuff. And there's no shame in that. It's completely your life. You know what I mean? It's your healing journey. You can do what you want with it. I actually was okay to do this because I never actually blocked out the memories of the physical abuse. Some of the CSHL sexual abuse I did sort of shove way down so I didn't have to think about it. But I was able to get a hold of the memories pretty quickly. And because I had partial memories, see, that's the issue. I never really completely let all this stuff go. You know, and I didn't shove it so far down that I couldn't grasp it. It's just that I didn't want to see it. Who does? You know what I'm saying? You know, it was hard to deal with, absolutely. But I knew I wasn't going to hurt myself or hurt somebody else going through this stuff, you know. So you have to be careful when you're doing this stuff. But I did. I destroyed all the photo albums with pictures of my parents. And I went through literally all of my pictures, every picture that I had, and got rid of all of them. And it's not like some people will burn them, you know, or do things like that. I didn't do anything like that. I just threw them out. They went in the garbage because I don't need to look at those pictures. I'm not going to ever honor my abusers. I'm not going to honor them. And for me, that's my way of coping. Some people are okay to honor their, you know, whoever abused them, like if it was a family member or something, and that's totally cool. Up to you. We're all different. For me, I was like, there's no way. No, I'm not doing that. And I'm happy because I did that. It's like, no, I have control of my life. I decide who's allowed in, who's not. And so I don't have any pictures now to go back and look at of my parents, but that's okay because I remember what they look like. And the issue is I'm not going to honor them and sit and go through those books. And, you know, I had those pictures. I never actually used to really look at them because of the abuse, you know what I mean? So it's just almost like would sit on the shelf, that photo album, and I'd just be like, always kind of bothered me that it was there. So after I started this healing journey, I got rid of it. And I'm actually glad that I did. You know, this is my life. I'm living my life. And I don't need the reminders of who my abusers are, you know. To look at pictures and go, oh, you know, it's like, no, because there was none of that in my life. There was none of that in my home, you know. So I don't want to do that now. My sister, on the other hand, is the exact opposite of me. She has some of my mom's stuff and my dad's stuff, and she honors it and worships it. And she's, you know, oh, mom, oh, dad. And I'm like, okay. But see, everybody's different, right? And that must be what she needs to do. So that's okay. You know what I mean? But for me, I had to go the opposite and get rid of that stuff. I don't want any reminders of them. I remember what they did to me. And so that's all I need to know. So be careful when you're doing that visualization stuff. Like I said, you want to just take it slow. They said number 3, if you enjoy art, draw a picture of your parents and family members. Draw a picture of yourself as a child. Include as much detail as you can recall. And the reason why they're giving this stuff, these suggestions here, is because this step is step 2, and it says I have determined that I was physically, sexually, or emotionally abused as a child. And by doing this self-help stuff, by drawing those pictures or looking at photos, it helps to solidify the reality of what the abuse was. So, you know, if a person's having a hard time getting in touch with that because it was so many years ago, but they really want to deal with it, these are ways that you can do this, right? So you can draw a picture of yourself as a child, include as much detail as you can recall. If the words to describe the abuse episodes are still escaping you, try drawing pictures of whatever memory fragments you have of the abuse. More details of the visual images will probably come to you as you continue to sketch out what happened, and eventually the descriptive words will follow. So this is, I had no problem getting a hold of the memories. And I did draw some, I can't draw. I'm really not an artist. I'm better off working with clay, things like that, but I can't draw or paint. But I did do some little sketches of some of the abuse episodes, the really stuff that really stays with me that was just so horrific. And, it was actually, I'm glad that I did that. It's not about artwork. It's about, this is the reality of the abuse. And that's horrific, right? And it's like, it's just basically lets my inner child get that out. And so, like I said before, I sometimes will write poetry and allow my inner child's voice to come out. That wounded inner part of myself, her voice gets to speak and say what she wants to say. So a few of my poems were actually written from the inside, letting my inner child say what she wanted to say. And those are, I think that's just, it was good for me. May not work for everybody else. But I did, like I said, do a lot of journaling, a lot of writing, how I was feeling, how my abusers made me feel. I did all of that. John Bradshaw's books also have stuff that you can do, suggestions of things that you can do. They're like workbooks, sort of the same as this. They have questions. He's got questions in there. You can go through and you can actually do the suggested stuff. And I mean, I did a lot of that, actually, if not all of it, through the years, right? So it was very helpful, it helped me to face it and then realize what feelings I was having because I would be doing this. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, okay, I need to work on anger. I need to work on grief, because some things would make me just feel sad, right? And then or down or depressed, and I'd be like, I got to do grief work. I really do, or some things would really cause me to become really angry and really raging angry, and I'd be like, I got to do anger work. So this is kind of how I gauged it. It's like how that made me. That helps to bring when you're doing this stuff. It actually does help to bring clarity to your thoughts and feelings of what the abuse did to you, how it made you feel, and how it's affecting you now as an adult, and sort of you take all of that in together, and that's, you can kind of see like, oh, okay, I see what I'm doing, as an adult, I haven't dealt with the anger, so I need to deal with the anger, haven't dealt with the grief, need to deal with the grief, whatever these issues are, right? And so it was helpful, absolutely, because I'm in a better place now than I've every year that rolls on, I can just say I'm just that much better because I'm so much further away from my breakdown crisis, which was a breakthrough crisis, but doing all of that work has solidified all this stuff for me so that, I don't have that rage anymore. I think I've still got some anger, but it's appropriate, It's not. I'm not going to be jumping for joy that my parents abused me and that my brother raped me. I'm not jumping for joy ever for that. I'm not going to ever be happy about that, and I'm not even going to be okay with it. Not at all. What they did was heinous. You know what I'm saying? Like abusers. There's no excuse for abuse. So I can separate that out. Some people may have difficulty with that, but I have no problem with that. I can keep some of that appropriate anger that says that was wrong. What they did was wrong. It's never going to be okay. And so as far as accepting the abuse, I accept what happened to me, but I'm never going to accept it. I'm never going to be okay with it. Because for me, that says that abuse is okay. It's like, no, it's not. Not okay. So everybody's different. Like I said, it's, whatever works for you, in your healing journey, that's totally cool because, we are all different. But for me, I had to separate it, and keep it separate because there's just no way that I can say, oh, my mom was just having difficulties. That it really wasn't her fault. This kind of stuff, I can't ever do that because my mother was a raging narcissist, sadistic narcissist who loved to beat on people, whoever she could get her hands on. And, it didn't matter which child she could grab, that's the one she was going to give it to. And even, that's just how she was, right? So she was abused. But the issue is that she also had mental issues, mental problems that she needed help with. And, you know, what they did was wrong. So, both my parents were mentally ill. So that's why people would say, well, you have to just kind of, realize that they were mentally ill. I've had people tell me that, and it's like, I don't care. They were the abusers, not me. And I didn't cause any of that to happen. And they chose to do what they did. You know, they made a conscious choice on how they were going to treat their children and each other. And, that's not okay, right? So for me, I keep a little bit of that. I don't mind having a little bit of that anger that acknowledges that what happened to me was wrong and that all abuse is wrong, because I think that's appropriate. You know what I mean? So I'm not trying to get rid of that anger. What I was trying to do was get rid of the rage that I was feeling that was actually killing me, and the rage that was just tearing up my heart and tearing up my soul and making my life miserable. So I did a lot of anger work, got a lot of that out by writing my books. That was a big helpful thing. Writing a blog and then turning it into a book. Because and I didn't care about selling books. It was never about money. I just donate the money because it's not about money. I wanted the world to know what happened to my siblings as well as myself. And I thought, that really made me feel better. I really did. I'm like, yeah, I feel a lot better now. Like the world's gonna see what happened. Whoever reads that book is a witness and a testimony to what my abusers did to me and what our parents did to us. That made me feel a lot better. A lot of that rage kind of went away at that point because I'm like, yeah, I feel better now. Tell the world the truth. And the issue is it's all true. And that's why my siblings couldn't say anything, and that's why they never will. One of them passed away now, but my sister's still living, and she would never come and say, "Oh, that's all bogus," because it's actually all true. So, the issue is it's just true. So I have to, I figured it wasn't going to do me any good to lie, you know what I'm saying? Because truth is truth. And so I felt really good doing that. Let me tell you, it was really helpful. But not everybody wants to do that. Some people will write, like I said, some people will journal about the abuse, what happened to them, how it made them feel. They'll tell off the abuser, whoever the abuser was, because it's not always a parent, you know what I'm saying? Mine just happens to be my parents and one of my brothers. But the issue is it's not always a parent. So whoever the abuser was, write a letter to them, telling them off, telling them everything that they made you feel, everything that what they did to you, how much it hurt. That's what I did. I literally wrote letters and wrote this stuff out, for my abusers. And I did some poems about it too, but mainly, I mean, this was major. I was literally telling them off, and I read it to them. They weren't here, but I just had this chair sitting there. It was John Bradshaw's book I was reading, and he said, put a chair there, read your whatever you want to tell that abuser, you're allowed to tell them, and you can just envision that they're sitting there. That really helped me out a lot too, because it allowed me to get out a lot of stuff that I needed to get out, so that wouldn't have come out otherwise, right? And so that was helpful, right? There's lots of little things that we can do. You just have to make sure you're safe enough to do these things, So they say, number 4, you might consider writing your autobiography, starting with your earliest memory and working forward to the present. If you can, make a trip back to your hometown to research your autobiography. Interview the people you knew who knew you as a child and ask them about their memories and perceptions of you back then. Just let the impressions, memories, and feelings wash over you. Write them down in your journal for future reference. This stuff you have to be careful with. And the reason I say that is because if it's family abuse, familial abuse, abuse within the family, that many people won't, actually most people will not side with the victim. They will almost always side with the abuser because the abuser is the adult. I've done a lot of studies on this. And most people don't realize that other people that are surround these family units where abuse is taking place, and the abusers are the parents or the grandparents or whoever's the caretakers are, the aunts, uncles, the adults in the situation who are on the outside of that, who know the family situation, maybe they know there's some problems. The issue is they have a relationship with the abuser, not with the children. So they're not going to ever look at it from that point of view. They're not going to see quite often your point of view. That's a lot of the time the case. And they'll side with the abusers, because they had a relationship with them, not with the children. So this is where that can be really, you want to be careful doing stuff like that because it can just reinforce the damage that's already been done. I personally didn't care what anybody thought because I had witnesses to the abuse. See, that's one thing that kind of gave me an edge and a bit of an advantage to my healing journey was because there were witnesses that actually saw the aftermath of the beatings. And these were adult people outside of the home that wanted to call the police, but I wouldn't let them. And they were going to call the cops and report the abuse. And I was like, because if I got removed from my home, I told them if I get removed from my home, I'm just going to run away. You know what I mean? And they were like, yeah, but you can't stay in that. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going into foster care. You know what I mean? I'm just not. If I end up in foster care or some sort of situation like that, I'm going to hit the streets. So will it be better for me or worse? Because I seriously did not want to be removed from my home. And like I'm saying, that was all a lot of psychological damage my mother did and my siblings, because if I would have been removed from my home, my siblings would have said, yeah, you were just a loser. Mom just had to get rid of you, but we all got to stay. See, because that's how my siblings were, Mom didn't have to throw us out. She only threw you out. That's where it would have gone. And I would have forever been so incredibly angry and hurt. I don't even know if I could have survived that, to be honest with you. Out of 7 siblings, to be the one that gets removed from the home finally. That's not cool. I was like, no, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to force my mother to take care of me. I don't care. That was my attitude. I'm like, she's going to. I don't care. And that's harsh, But I have witnesses that are outside the family that are still living today, and they're old, right? Because they're 20, 25, 30 years older than I am, so they're getting up there. But they remember and they know, this is the issue. So I've got validation, where so many survivors of abuse don't. And then they'll have all of these neighbors saying, I thought if it was your parents who abused you, or let's say it was somebody in the family and they knew them, so quite often it's like, well, I thought that they were fine. How could you accuse them of something like that? I've actually seen that in my own situation. People who knew my brothers, people who knew my parents, who were my brother's friends. Like I was talking about that on a show not too long ago here. And I just mentioned the fact that my brother who sexually abused me and raped me, one of his best friends was telling me, well, I knew your brother was really messed up, so I'm not surprised he did that to you. But he said, I don't know, you're talking about your parents and we just loved your mom. And I'm like, yeah, of course she did. She wasn't beating on you. She was buying them alcohol and letting them do drugs around the house, right? So people's perceptions of the abuser, you don't necessarily want to know that. You know what I'm saying? Be really, really careful about this stuff. You have to think it through. Abusers are the people who have relationships with that abuser never even really bother to care about the children, right? So if you start doing this thing where you start, going around to your old neighborhood, talking to people who may have if it was, let's just say, for instance, if it was one of your parents who abused you, trying to get some validation from them, it probably isn't going to happen. You know what I mean? Unless it's somebody who you knew that already was going to be honest and truthful about that person. You know what I mean? And like admit that, yeah, they had problems. You know what I mean? It seemed like there was something really wrong there. So you have to be careful about this stuff. Be really careful. Number 5, start recording your dreams and nightmares in your journal. A week or so later, reread them and write down any impressions, specific feelings, or images that come to you. Don't worry if everything seems disconnected. As you add the feeling and image details to the picture of your childhood, the whole picture will start to take shape. That's something, recording dreams, a lot of people do that anyway. But it is tough to record those, especially nightmares and stuff from the abuse. I used to have a lot of nightmares in my 30s, but not so much, after that. And I don't even really dream about my family or the abuse now. I don't have nightmares or even dreams about it. I do dream actually most of the time that I'm lost. I'm usually lost in my dreams, and I can't find my stuff. So I'm always lost, running. Um, so that's kind of a reflection, I guess, of my how I feel in life. Sort of running, lost. Um, can't find where I live even in my dreams. It's always some other big cities. I don't know where it is, and I don't even know where I live and like which apartment I'm in or what house I'm in. Very, very strange. But I'm always an adult in my dreams. I never dream about being a child or anything like that. So, dreams are just weird. But I have had dreams about the abuse in the past. And those I would call nightmares, really. They're just nightmares. And that was probably 30, between the age of, I'd say, 29 to like 34, 35 or something. And after that, my husband's health, he was diagnosed with terminal liver disease. And so that stuff all stopped at that point because all of a sudden my focus was on how are we going to keep my husband alive, right? So that's it, depending on what's going on in my life to whether this stuff actually comes out or not, right? If if I'm too inundated with something else, then that's what my focus is on. So, but I think it's important to get a hold of this stuff. And as far as recording dreams, nightmares, you can do that. I don't know, like, especially if it is about the abuse, which I used to dream about. That's what I'm saying. I used to dream about the abuse. So that would be a good thing to actually journal about, right? Because that's getting in touch with it, sort of. If you do have those types of things, but be careful doing it, like I said. And if you feel like you can't cope, it's too much, that's when you seriously want to reach out and get some help, right? Because you don't deserve to suffer on anymore. That's what I'm saying. Like that's what I'm always saying. You know, we didn't deserve to be abused in the first place. And then as an adult, what I gotta suffer on for the rest of my life because of what somebody did to me. Like that's not okay. Right? We should be able to get through this stuff and enjoy our life to the best of our capacity, right? And number 6, in ASCA meetings, share your acknowledgement about being abused as a child and your feelings about this realization. And that's if you're attending a meeting, like you actually belong to an ASCA group or you show up to some of the meetings sometimes or whatever. That's acknowledging the abuse to somebody else. It is difficult. I actually had told people about my past before. So even before I was dealing with my healing journey, some people would tell me about stuff that their so-and-so did in their family and, abuse them somehow. And I would, because I could empathize with them. So I was like, oh yeah, I went through some abuse, and it's not that I was ever in denial, but it's very difficult when you actually start facing this stuff. See, as long as I could just keep pushing it down, I felt like I was going to be okay. But the issue is that it would only hold for so long, and then I'd end up like I said yesterday, into like this spiraling pit of despair that would then cause me to want to take my life, which is no good, right? So until I actually really started working on this stuff and acknowledging it and getting to the root of it and saying this was all just too much, never should have happened, and actually start working through it, that's when I started getting better, right? So, some people just think, I could never tell anybody I was abused, and it's like, well, you don't have to tell everybody, but you could tell a therapist or a counselor, and that's what that can be good for, it's just allowing yourself to realize that you survived something that you shouldn't have had to, right? That you do deserve to be able to get over, right? But on your time and when it happens for you, not when somebody else says, "Can't you just get over it?" Was it really that bad? It's important to. This is your life. It's your journey, and you should be in control of it, right? And that's why don't listen to people who are trying to tell you, can't you just get over it? That's ridiculous. And I mean, I've made great progress, but I could never just get over it, right? That's the issue. So many people have been through so many horrific things, right? And you know, and then we have a world that would say, "Can't you just get over it?" It's like, I don't know, if all of this stuff happened to you, would you be able to get over it? That's what I feel like telling those people. I actually have told people that. But the thing is I don't wish anything bad on them. I really don't. I don't wish abuse on anybody because it's horrific. And I would never, I've probably said stuff in the past where I wish so and so would have had to deal with that, or, I wish somebody would have to know what I went through. I'm sure that I've said it in the past, but I actually don't mean it. Because to be honest with you, I don't. No, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. It's not okay. Nobody should have to suffer what we suffered as children and then have to try to figure out how to do life as an adult, right? And I'm like, okay, that was no fun. You know what I mean? It just, we need to, I think that's why it's so important to, if you are struggling, to get help, right? Because until I got help, I was going to continue on in this downward spiral all the time and ruin the rest of my life. See? And so now, okay, I do face the abuse and I do look at it, but I'm not spiraling downward anymore. I'm actually enjoying life, see, because I'm getting help and working through this stuff. So it is a process. It takes time. I hope it wouldn't take you as long as it's taken me. That's for sure. I suppose if I went into therapy, it would have taken a lot less time. It's just like, this is the route I chose. So what are you going to do? This is what I felt comfortable doing. And not, it's just the whole entire thing. Group support, self-help, looking at books, looking at information, watching videos, checking stuff out, talking to other survivors, group support, peer-to-peer, that I trust. And, just making progress as I go along. But it's lasting progress. So see, I think if I had gone to a therapist, I may not have been able to do that. That's why this one made sense for me, because this is something it's changing my life sort of, year to year to year. It's getting so much better all the time, right? And it's just little by little. It's not going to happen overnight, but I don't think it does for anybody. These are horrific stuff that we've been through, and even like war vets who like veterans who come back from military duty and they've seen some action and been involved in some traumatic stuff. They end up with PTSD. Well, that's the same as a child abuse survivor. It's the same wounding. It's the same trauma. It's just like being a war vet or, any of that really horrific stuff. Being part of being kidnapped and part of a situation like a hostage situation sort of thing. That can cause people major distress. Right. That's what child abuse does to children. So I honor my inner wounded self that I was so long ago, that little girl who really just wanted love and care, and somebody to somebody to actually just hold her and tell her they loved her, but mean it and actually repeat that and say it all the time. That's what I needed. I guess I was a sensitive child and I really needed somebody to just hold me and hug me and tell me they love me and, make me feel special. I honor that part of myself by doing the work that I'm doing, because it lets her voice out there. It lets her be seen. And I love her. So she's me. So I've learned how to love myself. So I'm saying it's very, very important to love those wounded parts of ourselves. But until we get in touch with it, we don't even know what we're looking for. It's like, well, how do I get in touch with that? That's why I did the work, because I wanted to start looking into this. Like, how am I going to do this? And how am I actually going to have this be a lasting healing journey and something I don't want to regress in like 2 years from now, be back where I started in the first place. So I've moved at a very slow turtle pace. I'd say it's almost like a turtle, just slowly moving through stuff. But it lasts and it holds, which then makes me feel stronger, and I don't have to then go back and revisit stuff that doesn't need to be revisited, because I've dealt with it. And so I feel much more comfortable in my space. I'm much more comfortable in my body, much more comfortable in my skin than I was even 4 or 5 years ago. So this is where taking your time to go through this stuff at your pace, whatever that pace is, and not rush it. It really can make a big difference, you know. So because we all want to get through this stuff because it's so painful as survivors of abuse. You know, it's kind of like, well, I don't want to feel this way anymore. You know, I just want to get this done because I want to feel better. That's understandable, but the issue is you don't want to rush it and almost then put that stuff, shove it down again just to feel good. But they did, like they mentioned that you know, taking a break can be very helpful. Like I said, I've done that many times. Things have become too much, and then, you know, in my personal life, and I'm like, okay, I have to take a break, you know. And I had to do that when my husband passed away. I seriously had to take a break at that point. I was like, okay, I'm grieving his loss, and I can't manage this other stuff at the same time. There's no way. So I knew that was going to happen. Actually, I was quite sure, you know, and it did. It took me a long time to grieve that stuff. So for my losing my husband. So, you know, he's passing away. So now I feel better, and I'm like, okay, I'll get back on it. See, but it's in manageable chunks. You know what I mean? Like I'm saying, I do all of this in manageable chunks, and like that's the work that I've done since 2000, mainly 2010. 2009 is when I started, but I did the bulk of it in 2010 and 2011, stuff like that. Those few years. And by 2012, like I said, I was feeling pretty good. But I mean, that's 3 years invested of really hard work, really almost daily working on this stuff. And, you know, it's sometimes taking a little bit of a break in between, you know, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, whatever. Just taking a break. Sometimes it's a good idea to do that, especially if you've been working really hard on your healing journey and you just like, okay, I need to step away for a while and just do life. And then I'll come back to that where it was, you know what I mean? So much things that a person can do, you know, and these are all just suggestions from the ASCA that they've written in their book there, but they are helpful. And let's see where we're at here. Professional help. I don't think we have enough time to do that section. So we'll do that one tomorrow, and then we'll pick up with step 3. And step 3 is I have made a commitment to recovery from my childhood abuse. So we'll finish off the professional help from this one tomorrow, and we'll look at step 3. And you can get this, like I said, from the ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, the Morris Center Program, www.ascasupport.org. It's free, like I said, to download or read off their website. I'm gonna have to check that out because I keep saying that because it used to be on there as a webpage. Somebody said it still is. That's why I keep saying that. I haven't checked it out myself, but somebody in the group, because I actually was doing training for the ACA group because I'm starting my group again, and they were saying that it is still there as a webpage. You can actually click through and just read it, so you don't have to download it. And if you're interested in checking it out, go take a look. But whatever you do, you know, if you're having a hard time, I always say this on all my shows. I go through this every single time. I've done thousands of shows. I keep saying it. If you're struggling and you have no clue how you're going to do it because you can't breathe and you don't even know what you're going to do, and you're like, oh my God, I don't even know if I can make it for another 5 seconds, you need to call a crisis line. Call somebody, because you do not deserve to go down because of what somebody did to you. This is what I'm saying. Do not be destroyed by your past. Do not be destroyed by what happened to you. It was not your fault. You reach out, you get some help because you so deserve it. We all do, you know? And why wouldn't we? We deserve help just as much as everybody else out there deserves help. Why are we any different? We're not. So there's no shame in reaching out. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in asking for help. And, you know, if you don't find the right person, then you hang up the phone and you call another one until you get somebody that you like and actually understands what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Because you may run into somebody who's it's just not the right one for you. So you keep calling until you get somebody who can help you get through this stuff. Right? So important. Because like it's my victory. I'm still here. And, you know, that's my victory over my abusers. Right? It's a slap in their face that I wake up every day and I'm still here. And it's like, ha, you couldn't kill me. You tried, but you couldn't. And I'm still here. So that's what I'm saying. Couldn't even get me to kill myself, right? Ha, ha, I win. So that's what I'm saying. Do not hurt yourself. You struggling, you get some help, right? Take really good care of yourselves. And thank you to my friends for being here. I had Melissa here and Wanda, and I got Pasagio Olivello here and others. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you spending this time with me. And I wish you a really wonderful day. I hope that You have a good night, Passaggio Olivello. And Melissa and Wanda, I hope you have a good day. If I can help anybody with any info or help you find resources, or if you just want to know kind of what worked for me, you can contact me on my about section. I've got my email address and all that there. And if I can help you find resources or anything, get a hold of me, right? So I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll pick up where we left off. And I really wish you a good day. Take good care of yourselves, everybody. Yeah, be good and kind to yourself. Love yourself. Be good to yourself. Be kind to others around you. Don't take any more abuse from anybody, and have a good day. Talk to you later. Bye.